कैसे आप सब लोग? आई होप आप सब लोग को ठीक होंगे। वेलकम टू यूनिटी बाय प्लस। और इस वीडियो में हम लोग पढ़ेंगे, स्टडी करेंगे अपने BT101 के टॉपिक्स को। तो चलते हैं जनाब, उसकी स्टडी कर लेते हैं इनको। सो टॉपिक नंबर 81 है। 80 हमने कर लिए हैं और वो सब मैंने अपलोड भी कर दिया, आप लोग वहाँ जाकर देख सकते हैं, ठीक है। उसके अलावा हमारा 81 टॉपिक है और उसको स्टडी करेंगे, हिस्ट्री ऑफ डार्विन एंड वॉयज, ठीक है। और अब टेक क्विज कर लेते हैं इसका इस तरह, विच इज़ नॉट ट्रू अबाउट फोटोसिंथेसिस कोर्स। नेक्स्ट चलते हैं लोग। सो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ये सही हो गया। उसके बाद नेक्स्ट अपनी वीडियो सुन लेते हैं।
Darwin's theory of natural selection is a landmark in history of evolution. So let's study who was Charles Darwin and how did he present and proposed his theory of natural selection. So Charles Darwin was born in England in 1809 and he was admitted and joined the School of Medicine, but he was not interested in being a physician, so he left the school and then he was sent to Cambridge University where he joined the Christ College to be a clergyman. But at the same time, again, instead of being clergy, getting the clergy education, he was more interested in working with the School of Biological Sciences, especially with the taxonomists. तो एट दैट टाइम जब वो कैम्ब्रिज में अपनी क्लर्जी एजुकेशन कंप्लीट कर रहा था, तो ही वाज वर्किंग विद द साइंटिस्ट जो कि बीटल टैक्सोनॉमी पे काम कर रहे थे. सो ही परफॉर्म्ड वेरी वेल इन कलेक्शन ऑफ द बीटल्स एंड आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ डिफरेंट स्पीशीज ऑफ बीटल्स. So that's why one co-worker whose name was John Henslow, who himself was a very good naturalist and a famous person at that time. So he proposed the name of Darwin for a voyage as a naturalist. And ये जो एक समुद्री सफर शुरू होने वाला था, उसका पर्पस था कि वो 5 years तक पूरी दुनिया के इर्द-गिर्द चक्कर कंप्लीट करेगा. And they will do the mapping, they will collect the samples from the different parts of the world, and then they would study the taxonomy and the fossil record and the geology and the different rocks which will be collected during this voyage. So Darwin, he joined this voyage, and to study the route of this voyage, we study this video. हम ये देख सकते हैं कि डार्विन विजिटेड डिफरेंट मेनलैंड्स, जिसमें कि सारे कॉन्टिनेंट्स जो हैं वो इंक्लूडेड हैं, मेजर कॉन्टिनेंट्स. उसमें ऐसे कॉन्टिनेंट्स में which are isolated islands, for example New Zealand and Australia, and then there were small islands. So at the same voyage, on the same journey, he was studying different mainlands, different features, their flora, fauna, climate, and he was collecting the fossil record as well and the rocks. So ये बहुत एक ऐसा सफर था जिसने इसको डार्विन को एक बहुत वैरायटी ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन और डाटा कलेक्शन की अपॉर्चुनिटीज प्रोवाइड की. So HMS Beagle का ये जर्नी इट स्टार्टेड ऑन December 27, 1831 and it was a 5-year long voyage. So Darwin was working as a naturalist. He was helping in the seafaring task, and he was at the same time he was collecting different fossils, different rocks. He was exploring the tropical rainforest, South America, especially the fossil record which he collected from South America really helped him in proposing his theory of natural selection. And then he also visited the atolls of South Pacific. So the visit to different islands, which including the Galapagos Island, the most significant destination during this voyage. So he spent 5 weeks on the Galapagos Island. और इस स्टडी में जो वहाँ पर उसने वहाँ के एनिमल्स और प्लांट्स पर 5 weeks की इन्वेस्टिगेटिव स्टडी की, he collected a lot of data which helped him in understanding the process of evolution on an island. So the most evolutionary ideas, they come from all these observations which he did on in South America and Galapagos Islands. On his return, he analyzed his data, he discussed it with his co-workers and contemporary evolutionists and naturalists, जिसमें कि बहुत important name is the Wallace, Alfred Wallace के साथ उसने इस natural selection की theory को provide की जो discuss किया. But it took him 22 years for this analysis and concluding the theory of natural selection, which changed the concept of evolution all over the world. And still, even now, we are following the same theory, and it has been confirmed by the modern developments and the modern studies as well. So that was his book, The Origin of Species, which was published in 1859 in the Linnean Proceedings of Linnean Society, and it was a breakthrough in study of evolution.
tradition in Scotland in 1825 to be trained as a physician. However, his interests were elsewhere. In 1831, he graduated with honors from Christ College in Cambridge. During his stay at Christ College, instead of his clergy training, Darwin was more involved in works of Cambridge scientists, especially the taxonomist. He made valuable contribution to beetle taxonomy. Based on his interest, John Henslow nominated him to serve as naturalist on a mapping expedition that was to travel around the world. During this 5-year-long expedition, Darwin visited many locations ranging from small volcanic islands to continents in Pacific, Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Darwin helped with the routine seafaring tasks and made countless collections. This voyage on HMS Beagle was an opportunity to explore tropical rainforest, fossil beds, the volcanic peaks of South America and coral atolls of the South Pacific. During his expedition, Darwin spent 5 weeks on the Galapagos Islands, where he observed the flora and fauna of island. His observations led to most evolutionary ideas related to evolution of living organisms. After his voyage, Darwin spent 22 years to publish his work in the form of history-changing book, Origin of Species in 1959. In this lesson, the student will learn about Darwin's HMS Beagle voyage. Okay. तो आगे चलते हैं हम लोग यहाँ पर हिस्ट्री ऑफ डार्विन एंड वॉयज. ठीक है. चार्ल्स रॉबर्ट डार्विन 1809 to 1992 in England. ठीक है. उसके बाद हमारे पास में है he joined School of Medicine Scotland in 1825, but he was not interested in being physician. Later he joined Christ College in Cambridge and graduated with honors in 1831. Instead of clergy training, he had been more involved in work of Cambridge's scientists, especially taxonomists. He made valuable contributions to beetle taxonomy. John Henslow nominated Darwin to serve as a naturalist on a mapping expedition that was to travel around the world. और अब देखते हैं आगे. So history of Darwin and voyage. HMS Beagle set sail on December 27, 1831 on a 5-year voyage. ठीक है. Darwin helped with routine seafaring tasks and made numerous collections. Opportunity to explore tropical rainforest, fossil beds, the volcanic peaks of South America and the coral atolls of the South Pacific. ठीक है. Most importantly, Darwin spent 5 weeks on the Galapagos Islands, a group of volcanic islands 900 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador. Most revolutionary ideas came from his observation of plants and animal life on these islands. उसके बाद on his return, it took him 22 years to publish his history-changing book, Origin of Species in 1859. Okay. So we are here with our post-assessment. Okay. So let's take it. George Cuvier proposed that fossils resemble but are not exactly same as modern species. Fossils are exactly the same as modern species.
much impressed by the contemporary geologists Charles Lyell and James Sullin, who proposed the theory of uniformitarianism. Basically, Darwin was not a geologist, but the collections which he made over his journey supported the theories presented by those geologists. So the theory of uniformitarianism means these both geologists they proposed कि अर्थ की वो सरफेस पे जो फीचर्स आज हमें नजर आ रही हैं, they are actually a result of the cumulative changes which are coming from the past times, past events, and there is a continuous process of changes which is coming, which is appearing and occurring, and they are changing the face of the earth, which means the geological features of the earth. So the Darwin he thought the theory of uniformitarianism it proposed एक यूनिफॉर्म पैटर्न है चेंजेस का जो कि अर्थ की क्रिएशन के साथ से लेकर अब तक चलता चला आ रहा है, और ये चेंजेस अर्थ को कंटिन्यूअसली और कांस्टेंट स्पीड पर कांस्टेंट रेट पर चेंज करते चले जा रहे हैं. So he extracted two major concepts from this theory, and the one was the earth is not that old, it's much older as we think. So Darwin thought that it could be up to 6,000 years. इतना older एक एज पे इतनी 6,000 years से older लाइफ जो है वो हमारी अर्थ पर स्टार्ट हो चुकी है. That was the concept, and now we know that our earth is very old, even older than 6,000 years. So then he concluded कि अगर अर्थ पर एक constant changes होते चले जा रहे हैं, and these changes are geological and in climate, so there is possibility कि अगर environment हमारी अर्थ पर change हो रहा है, and these changes are causing variations and changes in the life which is present on the earth as well. Because he was familiar with this concept and he got this strengthened this concept कि जब अर्थ पर या किसी भी environment में किसी भी ecosystem में वहाँ का environment change होता है या वहाँ के geological features change होते हैं, उसके result में वहाँ पे मौजूद animals और plants को भी change होना पड़ता है. So that was the foundation of evolutionary process. So with the help of these geological evidences, he proposed that there are the gradual changes over the time with the changing environment, and that was the foundation of theory of natural selection.
So friends, हमारी वीडियो हो गई कंप्लीट. हम चलते हैं रीडिंग की तरफ. रीडिंग कर लेते हैं. Darwin based his theory on many solid evidences from his observations and collected samples. The three key evidences he used for building his arguments were geology, fossils, and his observations on the Galapagos Islands. ठीक है. Darwin was very impressed by geologist Charles Lyell and James Hutton's idea of geology. They had proposed the theory of uniformitarianism, emphasizing that changes occur in the Earth's crust throughout the history have resulted from the action of uniform, continuous processes. This theory made Darwin realize that Earth could be much older than the contemporarily believed 6,000 years. The second important inspiration that Darwin took from the theory of uniformitarianism was that if the face of Earth changed gradually over long periods, would the living forms also change during that time? The gradual changes over the time with the changing environment was the foundation of the theory of natural selection. In this lesson, the students will learn about theory of uniformitarianism. ठीक है. उसके बाद हमारे पास स्लाइड्स हैं. स्लाइड्स को ओपन कर लेते हैं और इनको पढ़ लेते हैं. ठीक है. और evidences of theory of natural selection. Darwin based his theory on many solid evidences from his observations and collected samples. Three major evidences: geology, fossil evidences, Galapagos Islands. ठीक है. उसके बाद जियोलॉजी में Darwin was impressed by Charles Lyell and James Hutton's idea of geology, theory of uniformitarianism. Theory states changes in the Earth's crust throughout history have resulted from the action of uniform continuous processes. ठीक है. फिर जियोलॉजी theory of uniformitarianism planted two ideas in Darwin's mind. The Earth could be much older than 6,000 years. If the face of the Earth changed gradually over long periods, living forms also changed during that time. Geology, gradual changes over the time with changing environment was foundation of the theory of natural selection. सही होगा. अब हम ले लेते हैं इसकी कोर्स असेसमेंट और उसके बाद हमारे टॉपिक कंप्लीट. चेंजेस इन द अर्थ crust throughout history have resulted from the action of uniform processes known as theory of uniformitarianism. Thus nominated Darwin to serve as natural
observed that he found certain fossil record from these riverbeds, and one was an extinct hippopotamus-like animal which is called as Toxodon, and then there was a horse-like animal which is called as Montherium. So these are the images of these large mammals, extinct large mammals, which were discovered in South America. So that is the Toxodon. It is looks like the present-day hippopotamus. The difference is the size. They were large in size, and the current-day hippopotamus are comparatively smaller in size as compared to these animals. And then the Montherium is the horse-like animal, which was found as an extinct species in South America. So जो एक observation डार्विन ने यहाँ पे नोट की that the horses are not present in South America. They became extinct long ago. और वो traders और invaders जो कि different colonies बनाने के लिए अमेरिका की तरफ मूव कर रहे थे, so Spanish they introduced the horses in South America. So there was no horse before 1500 century in South America. But he found a horse-like animal which could be the ancestor of horses in South America. So यहाँ पर डार्विन he observed that there is possibility that horses they were present in past time in South America, but due to certain reason they all became extinct or eliminated without leaving any descendant species of horses in Argentina and the other countries of South America. So there was a sudden extinction without leaving any remnant, without leaving any successor. And then he observed another fossil record, which was a giant extinct armadillo, which is called as Glyptodonts. So he found his fossil record in South America, but at the same time he discovered कि Glyptodonts के साथ मिलते जुलते descendants जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा उससे similar हैं, which are called as armadillos, and armadillos are still present in South America. So he discovered कि Glyptodonts, although कि ये extinct हो गए, but they due to certain changes in environment, possibly due to certain changes in environment, Glyptodonts they start converting or transforming into different species, which is now known as armadillo and its subspecies. So the only difference between the ancestor and the present-day species, which is armadillo, that is a difference of size. So Glyptodonts were larger, armadillos are comparatively smaller. And he found that how come these fossil remains and the modern-day species in the same continent they could be so closely resemble to each other. Armadillos और horses या Montherium के साथ-साथ दूसरी species उसने वहाँ पे observe की. He discovered कि rhea is a flightless bird and they are the large-sized birds and they are present in South American parts. So they are called as the greater rheas, and greater rheas which are present in comparatively grasslands, those areas which are not dry. So they are larger in size. लेकिन rhea की वही मिलती जुलती species जो कि किसी दूसरे region में है, and that region is dry in its climate. It is called as Darwin's rhea, is brown in color and smaller in size. So ये दोनों species एक ही वक्त में एक ही continent के different parts में different environments में survive करी हैं, and then they have changed themselves according to need of their environment. So ये another evidence which the other observation he made in South America. So based upon these evidences and observations he made in that region, he concluded कि ऐसी एक possibility है कि कोई species which are existing in one ecosystem in one environment, लेकिन वो suddenly वहाँ से disappear हो जाती हैं, they become extinct, or there could be a drastic region, there could be a natural catastrophe, जिसके result में पूरी species जो है उनकी population वहाँ से eliminate हो जाती है, and they don't get chance to leave a descendant or a size of population which can inbreed and they can reproduce and survive and continue their genetic line. So that was the one conclusion. The other conclusion is ये भी एक possibility है कि once the environment is gradually changing, it will make those animals and plants which are present in that environment, they will change gradually as well. So instead of being extinct, they change themselves according to changing environment. And current day species or the present species, they are similar to their ancestors, लेकिन वहाँ पे कुछ ऐसे differences हैं which are absent, or there are certain traits which are absent in their ancestors, but they are present in present day species, and these traits are supporting these animals to survive in the new environment or the changed environment. So other thing is recent fossils which he collected from the different layers of earth. He found कि ये geological record is actually a paleohistory. तो जितनी हम bottom से जो fossil record लेते हैं, it is more closer to the past or the paleo species which are present in the past times. The more recent fossils they are discovered in those layers which are comparatively new. And then he found that these animals they are closely similar to each other. So अगर soil की एक sedimentary layer से जो fossil record निकाला जाता है, it is more similar to that fossil record which is present in adjacent layer. So that's how we get a calendar, or that's how we get an evolutionary line. और उसमें एक ancestor से लेकर वहाँ पे जो current species है वहाँ तक इनके दरमियान में जितने भी evolutionary links हैं उनमें से possibly जितने भी discover हो सकते हैं, they could be discovered and then they could provide a linkage between ancestor and present species. So he concluded that based on these conclusion, there was another evidence which was a third evidence, and it came from the fossil record geology, and then there was the Galapagos Island.
So फ्रेंड्स हमारी वीडियो हो गई कंप्लीट. हम चलते हैं अपनी रीडिंग की तरफ. रीडिंग कर लेते हैं और रीडिंग में आ जाते हैं. तो यहाँ पर आकर डाउनलोड कर लेते हैं और रीड करें. ड्यूरिंग द HMS Beagle voyage, Darwin collected numerous fossils. He excavated river of Pampas in Argentina, where he found many fossils. These contained an extinct hippopotamus like animal Toxodon and horse-like animal Zoantherium. Darwin used most of the fossils that excavated as evidences in support of this theory. He observed that South America did not have horses before the colonizers introduced them in 1500. Based on the fossils, he realized that horses had been present and had become extinct long ago. There was a sudden extinction without leaving descendant species. ठीक है, उसके बाद डार्विन also found the fossils of a giant extinct armadillo. He observed that except for their large size, these fossils were very similar to forms he found living in the region. He argued that why would fossil remains and modern species found on the same continent resemble each other so closely. Darwin also observed large flightless birds, rhea, living in two different habitats, grasslands and dry areas. He inferred that one species is replaced by an allied species geographically. Based on his observations, Darwin concluded that some species become extinct without leaving any descendant, or others become extinct but not before giving rise to new species. The recent fossils are closely related to extinct species, and that the adjacent layers in the fossil record contain similar organisms. ठीक है, in this lesson the students will learn about fossil evidence in support of Darwin's theory. So अब हम अपनी PPTs को पढ़ लेते हैं. Alright, so we have here our PPTs. Or evidences of theory of natural selection, fossil evidences, digging in reservoir of Pampas in Argentina. Most of evidences of theory came from fossils. He found fossils of extinct hippopotamus-like animal, now called toxodon, horse-like animal, Zoantherium. ठीक है, उसके बाद है evidences of theory of natural selection to toxodon, extinct hippopotamus-like animal, now called toxodon, Zoantherium, horse-like animal, Zoantherium. ठीक है, उसके बाद है evidences of theory of natural selection to, इसके अंदर है horses had been present and had become extinct long ago in South America. They were introduced in 1500. There was sudden extinction without leaving descendant species. उसके बाद giant extinction, armadillo and present descendants. Except for their large size, these fossils were very similar to forms Darwin found living in the region. Why would fossil remains and modern species found on the same continent resemble each other so closely? ठीक है, one species is replaced by an allied species geographically. Rhea in North Argentina, replaced in south of the Rio Negro by a smaller brown rhea. So he concluded some species became extinct without leaving any descendants, others became extinct but not before giving rise to new species. ठीक है, recent fossils are closely related to extant species. Adjacent layers in the fossil record contain similar organisms. ठीक है, इससे बढ़ जाते हैं हम लोग क्रॉस, चलते हैं हम लोग आगे, प्रोसेस में ले लेते हैं और आगे चलते हैं. ठीक है, ये है कि नाम
named after the species of tortoise which are present on these islands, which are called as Galapagos. So they are named after them, those tortoise. So Darwin noticed that these tortoises which are present on different islands, they बहुत ज़्यादा दूसरे के साथ similar हैं, but except कि यहाँ पर इनकी दो ऐसे parameters हैं which are different from each other, where they have this similarity. And one is the shape of their shell, and second was the neck length. So he observed even those species which are present on same island but in different habitats, they have dissimilarities in shape of shell and the length of their neck. So those tortoises, those species which are present in the dry regions, they have longer necks. जबकि वो species जो कि wetter areas में हैं, they have the shorter length of their necks. So these tortoise species, although they have one have the longer neck and other has the shorter neck, but still they are very similar to each other, and they are very similar to even those species of tortoise which are present on the mainland of South America. So he concluded that this difference of the neck length, it could be because of the different feeding habits. So इसमें हमने स्टडी किया कि shape of the shell and the length of their neck, that is associated with their feeding habits or the food resources available in that habitat. So वो tortoise जो कि एक drier habitat में है, they have to stretch their neck ताकि वो cactus के flowers और वहाँ पर मौजूद shrubs से अपने leaves जो है उनको तोड़ सकें, उसको as food जो है वो utilize कर सकें. neck को stretch करने के लिए उनके shell की shape में इस तरह के changes आए हैं कि neck जो है वो height पर जा सके. लेकिन वो tortoise species which are present in the wetter areas जहाँ पर food is available in form of grass, shrubs और herbs की form में available है, और tortoise के लिए अपने neck को stretch करना उसके लिए ज़रूरी नहीं है. So they can easily access the food which are present in the form of grass or the small leaves on the shrubs and herbs present in that habitat. So therefore वहाँ पे उनकी जो shell की shape है वो height पर नहीं है, it's comparatively lower, and they don't have longer necks because they don't need to stretch their necks to catch food or to pluck these leaves or catch the grass. So ये एक बहुत ही important observation थी which Darwin he made, and then he observed कि अगर environmental changes इस तरीके से आते हैं कि environment वहाँ पे मौजूद animals को अपनी survival के लिए उन environmental changes के according change होना पड़ता है. So that's why वो tortoise जो कि एक drier area में रह रहे हैं, they developed the longer necks, and then the shape of shell was changed so they can survive in the changed environment which is a dry environment. जबकि ये सारी characteristics or traits, these are absent in those tortoises which are present in wetter areas because they don't need to have these traits as their environment is very much supportive to them. So other than these Galapagos tortoise, दूसरी जो एक group of species which helped the Darwin a lot in proposing his theory, they were the Galapagos finches. So in islands पे there were 14 species of finches which he studied and he collected his observations. So Darwin he observed that those finches which are present on the Galapagos island, although they are 14, they have these similarities in the shape of their beak and the size of their beak, which is actually the width of the beak, but they are still very much similar to each other, and they are similar to those species which are present on the mainland of South America. So he suggested there is a common ancestry between these species, the different species of the finches. So what he proposed, he said there is a chance arrival. By chance, a group of finches from the mainland, they flew towards these volcanic islands of Galapagos. और जब ये finches की population वहाँ पर पहुँची, so there was no competitor, there was no bird. वहाँ पर इनके लिए there were a lot of resources available. These animals, these finches, they were seed eaters. So they selected that area which was rich in seed-producing plants. So they were present in that habitat. लेकिन with passage of the time, जब इन finches की population size increase होता चला गया, so then there came the competition. Resources जो हैं वो limited थे, so species की population जो है वो increase करी थी. So therefore they decided to inhabit different habitats other than those seed-bearing habitat. To survive in a different environment, other than these seed-bearing habitat, they have to develop certain traits to survive. और ये वो traits हैं जिनकी वजह से अब हमें वहाँ पर 14 different species नजर आती हैं. So each species was adapted to a specific habitat on the islands. और इस adaptation के result में जो parameters और जो morphological features उनकी body में changes हुए, वहाँ पर was the dietary habit. So they changed their dietary habit according to the changed environment. Instead of eating seeds all the time, they adapted different sources of food as well. And then there were changes in shape and size of their beak or the bill. So in this image, we can see the different species of finches which can be divided into different feeding groups. For example, these are the finches which are feeding on insects, and these are feeding on cactus. These are seed eaters, and these are insect eaters too, and these are plant eaters. So we can observe that इनकी food resources are changing, और at the same time यहाँ पर beak की shape और length भी change होती चली जा रही है. So here the beak is smaller in width but longer in length, or different feeding habits के according the shape and the length of beak is or the bill is changing. So they have a very wide beaks, and they have a stronger sport here from their skeleton because they are feeding on seeds. They have to break seed, which needs a lot of friction and it produces a lot of shock on their skulls. So उसको support करने के लिए इनकी beak की width increase होगी but length decrease होगी. So at the same time we can see that there are different shapes and the different lengths, और ये वो record है जिसको Darwin ने observed किया. So he observed that these formation of new forms, they are from the one ancestral species and usually in response to opening of new habitats. So that was a foundation for Darwin's theory of natural selection, that when there is a change in environment, it will cause the changes in the life present in that environment as well. And this is called as adaptive radiation. So these 14 different species of finches have actually 14 adaptive radiations to survive in changed environment.
So friends, हमारी वीडियो आगे कंप्लीट, हम चलते हैं अपनी रीडिंग की तरफ. रीडिंग कर लेते हैं. Okay, let's start. The last set of evidences presented by Darwin were the observations he made on the Galapagos Islands. The island is named after the large tortoise species that inhabit the island. America established the very first bird population on the islands. Naturally, they feed on. They face no competition. With other birds or predators being the seed eaters, those birds inhabited the seed-bearing habitats from this ancestral group. 14 new species emerged, and each one of the species is adapted to specific habitat on the islands due to colonization. Different habitats, these birds evolved into different species based on dietary habits and shape and size of beak. Darwin postulated that formation of new forms from an ancestral species is usually a response to the opening of new habitat. It is called adaptive radiations. In this lesson, the students will learn about Darwin's observation on Galapagos Island. ठीक है? So, इस चीज़ को थोड़ा टाइम लग रहा है. चलिए इसको हम रहने देते हैं, अगले टॉपिक कर लेते हैं. जैसे बहुत टाइम लग रहा है और हमारे पास इतना टाइम नहीं. ठीक है, चलते हैं आगे. पोस्ट परेशानी वाली बात नहीं है, वीडियो की अलग से पढ़ेंगी लाजमी तौर पर. ठीक है, तो चलते हैं अपने प्रोसेसमेंट के लिए. प्रोसेसमेंट पर ले लेते हैं हम लोग. स्मॉल नॉन फंक्शनल ग्रुप्स आर नोन एज homologous organs. Non-functional organs. A carnivore has long dash to beat its prey. Theory of natural selection 1 तो इसमें लेंगे
फॉसिल रिकॉर्ड, जियोलॉजिकल रिकॉर्ड और वो ऑब्जर्वेशंस जो कि डार्विन ने गैलापागोस आइलैंड्स पे रिकॉर्ड की, उनकी बेस पर ही प्रपोज्ड हिज थ्योरी एंड ही पब्लिश्ड हिज बुक ऑफ ओरिजिन ऑफ स्पीशीज इन 1859. इस थ्योरी में देयर आर मेजर 4 डिफरेंट postulates and each postulate describes the driving force behind the evolution. So these 4 driving forces or these 4 postulates we will discuss one by one. First one is competition. So Darwin was also familiar with the pressure of population on natural resources. Darwin से पहले Malthus has proposed his theory of population pressure. और ये population pressure वही एक theory है जिसको हम इससे पहले के lectures में discuss कर चुके हैं when we were discussing about the population size. So we know when the population size is increasing, ये वहाँ पर मौजूद resources पर एक pressure exert करता है. Because the increasing population size, these individuals, they are consuming resources, but the resources are limited. They would support the increase in population to certain limit, लेकिन उसके बाद ये उस population के size increase को support करना stop कर देता है. And then there is a termination or a decrease in the size of population. So वो सब organisms which are present, most of them in one habitat, they have a greater reproductive potential as compared to the bigger animals. So mostly all these smaller animals until the level of the birds, they have a greater reproductive potential. For example, a female sea star, it could releases about 1 million eggs each season. So अगर हम assume करें कि 1 million eggs, all of them are fertilized, ये सब के सब 1 million जो है वो develop हो जाते हैं, and then they get opportunity to develop into adults, they become mature. population size में drastic increase होता है, there would be an unimaginable resource problems, there would be an unimaginable pressure on the resources present in that environment. So these limited resources and increasing population sizes, they create competition between the species or among the individuals of same species. So we have two different types of competitions. One is intraspecific. ये वो competition है जो कि same species के individuals के बीच में हो रहा है because they have similar needs of resources. And then the other one is interspecific competition, which is happening between two or more than two different species present in that habitat. So they all are competing for food, for the shelter, for all these climatic resources which are available in that habitat, and they need a place and a shelter for the reproduction and for their offspring. So there is a very tough competition when the population size has increased. So to understand this process of competition, we can study here. It's again the Galapagos finches. ये उन्हीं के example है कि number of finches is higher, and then it is increasing with the passage of the time. But once those resources, climatic resources, are not favorable, because there was a drought conditions in Galapagos Island during 1977, और इस ड्राई कंडीशंस की वजह से वहाँ पर फूड रिसोर्सेज और वाटर रिसोर्सेज दे वर ड्रॉप्ड, और देयर इज़ अ डायरेक्ट लिंकेज एसोसिएशन बिटवीन क्लाइमेटिक फैक्टर्स एंड साइज ऑफ पॉपुलेशन. तो जब क्लाइमेटिक फैक्टर्स या टेम्परेचर कंडीशंस और फूड की अवेलेबिलिटी इज़ नॉट सपोर्टिंग इंक्रीज इन पॉपुलेशन, सो देयर वाज अ डिक्रीज इन साइज ऑफ population. That is because this decrease or the drop is because of lesser availability of resources available in that habitat. But in 1978 जब ये drought conditions improve हुई, उसके साथ ही population size दोबारा से improve होना शुरू हो गया, but it couldn't reach up to that limit. वो there is a big proportion of individuals or the populations जो कि 1977 में reduce हो गए. So now the resources are gradually increasing and the population is gradually increasing. So that one driving force which is called the competition, and this competition is responsible for bringing the evolution in.
So हमारी वीडियो हो गई complete. Let's move towards our reading. फ्रेंड जो कभी मेरे चैनल पर नहीं हुआ वो मेरे चैनल को लाइक करके सब्सक्राइब कर दे, और ताकि आप लोगों को आने वाली वीडियोस के नोटिफिकेशन मिलते रहें. उसके अलावा यहाँ तक हमारे 85 टॉपिक्स तकरीबन भी कंप्लीट होता है. इसके 2 स्टेप्स रहते हैं, बस रीडिंग वाला और पोस्ट असेसमेंट वाला. वीडियो हमारी हो गई है कंप्लीट.
So is fossil record, geological record और वो observations जो कि डार्विन ने गैलापागोस आइलैंड्स पे रिकॉर्ड की, उनकी बेस पर he proposed his theory and he published his book of origin of species in 1859. इस theory में there are major 4 different postulates, and each postulate describes the driving force behind the evolution. So these 4 driving forces or these 4 postulates, first one is competition. So Darwin was also familiar with the pressure of population on natural resources. Darwin से पहले Malthus has proposed his theory of population pressure. और ये population pressure वही एक theory है जिसको हम इससे पहले के lectures में discuss कर चुके हैं when we were discussing about the population size. So we know when the population size is increasing, ये वहाँ पर मौजूद resources पर एक pressure exert होता है. Because the increasing population size, these individuals they are consuming resources, but the resources are limited. They would support the increase in population to certain limit. लेकिन उसके बाद ये उस population के size increase को support करना stop कर देता है. And then there is a termination or a decrease in the size of population. So वो सब organisms which are present, most of them in one habitat, they have greater reproductive potential as compared to the bigger animals. So mostly all these smaller animals until the level of birds, they have a greater reproductive potential. For example, a female sea star, it would releases about 1 million eggs each season. तो अगर हम assume करें कि 1 million eggs, all of them are fertilized, ये सब के सब 1 million जो है वो develop हो जाती हैं, and then they get opportunity to develop into adults, they become mature, more, and all these 1 million are capable of reproducing and producing 1 million eggs again, or the 1 million animals again in the next generation. So there would be a drastic increase in the population size in all these species which are reproducing with great potential. जैसे ही population size में drastic increase होता है, there would be an unimaginable resource problems, there would be an unimaginable pressure on the resources present in that environment. So these limited resources and increasing population sizes, they create competition between the species or among the individuals of the same species. So we have two different types of competitions. One is interspecific, ये वो competition है जो कि same species के individuals के बीच में हो रहा है because they have similar needs of resources. And then the other one is interspecific competition, which is happening between two or more than two different species present in that habitat. So they all are competing for food, for shelter, for all these climatic resources which are available in that habitat, and they need a place and a shelter for the reproduction and for their offspring. So there is a very tough competition when the population size has increased. So to understand this process of competition, we can study here, it's again the Galapagos finches. The only example is the number of finches is higher, and then it is increasing with the passage of the time. But once those resources, climatic resources, are not favorable, because there was a drought conditions in Galapagos Island during 1977, or इस dry conditions की वजह से वहाँ पर food resources, or water resources, they were dropped, or there is a direct linkage, association between climatic factors and size of population. So जब climatic factors या temperature conditions or food availability is not supporting increase in population, so there was a decrease in size of population. That is because this decrease or the drop is because of lesser availability of resources available in that habitat. But in 1978 जब drought conditions improve हुई, उसके साथ ही population size दोबारा से improve होना शुरू हो गया, but it couldn't reach up to that limit. वो there is a big proportion of individuals or the populations जो कि 1977 में reduce हो गए. So now the resources are gradually increasing and the population is gradually increasing. So that one driving force, which is called the competition, and this competition is responsible for bringing the evolution in.
So friends, फाइनली हमारी वीडियो अच्छे से कंप्लीट हो गई है. अब हम चलते हैं आगे. Okay. Based on the observations and the collected data, Darwin proposed his theory of natural selection in the form of origin of a species in 1859. This theory has four major postulates, and each one describes the driving force behind the evolution or competition. All organisms have a forward-generated reproductive potential that is ever realized. Female sea star releases about 1 million eggs each season. If all of them are fertilized and developed to reproductive adults by following year, then it could result in a significant pressure on the resources on the habitat and can affect the sustainability of the ecosystem. The limited resources result in intraspecific and interspecific competitions between the individuals. In this lesson, the students will learn about competition as the driving force behind evolution. Okay. So अपने PPTs को भी पढ़ लेते हैं. Based on his some main topic is theory of natural selection 1. Based on his observations and collected data, Darwin proposed his theory of natural selection in form of origin of species in 1859. Theory has four major postulates. Each postulate describes the driving force behind evolution. Competition. One is competition. All organisms have a far greater reproductive potential than is ever realized. Example is female sea star releases about 1 million eggs each year. What if all of these eggs are fertilized and developed to reproductive adults by the following year? Drastic increase in population size of each species, unimaginable resource problems in just a few years. Limited resources and increasing population sizes create competition between individuals and interspecific and interspecific. So you get a decline in population size. Okay. Change in environment resources. So you get done. अब इसको कर लेते हैं क्रॉस और ये लास्ट स्टेप इसका कर लेते हैं इस तरह से. एंड देन वी हैव हियर द क्वेश्चन among the Galapagos finches the most obvious differences were in Taxodon is all three. Ancestral finches were नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. इसको पहले इतना सारा इस वीडियो में हम इतने ही टॉपिक्स करेंगे. सो अगले 6 टॉपिक से आगे अगली वीडियो में स्टार्ट करेंगे। सो थैंक यू सो मच, अल्लाह हाफिज़।